Hello. Hello.
What's up?
Hey,
I just sent him the third one. He texted. Does he got it now?
I'm not sure. He should have it. I think he should be getting in. Hopefully.
Yeah, I just sent him the third one
I
because
said
he
wait for
texted
the
me.
new. I said wait for the new link and do it again.
He's on.
Hey.
I'm sandwiched between Michael and
Rob.
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 Rock and Rob. Rock and Rob. How come there's no picture of me?
Well, we're gonna have to put something there. I don't know.
Like, I hate those motherfuckers online who hide. They join these things. It's like, I want to be a friend. I'm not going to show you what I look like. I'm not going to show you anything about my life, but I want to know everything about yours.
Right. And they just spy on you, and they never say nothing. They never hit like or anything, but they're watching.
I call them one-way mirror motherfuckers.
All right. So, Rob, give a little intro here.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Getting Lumped Up, and this is RockerMike and Rob present the great, fantastic Dick Manitoba.
The mighty Dick.
How you doing, Manitoba?
I'm doing like you're doing. I'm trying to fucking pay my bills. I'm trying to I don't know if you have a son, but I take care of my 17-year-old son. So, I'm trying to get motivated. I have a real dichotomy in my personality. It's very polar as far as energy and performance goes. Like, for example, at one point I was running Manitoba's bar,
right,
and at the same time doing 5 shows a week up at Sirius XM Radio now for little Steve.
Right, I remember that. Yeah,
and at the same time I was traveling to Europe 6 weeks a year with the Dictators NYC, plus guest starring, plus master of ceremony, plus this, plus any job I could get that I thought was creative or fun, I would do. So I was just like, into being busy all the time and getting my ass out there. Now, that's one part of me, and I'm a very, very hard worker. The other part of me is one of my dreams was to buy a small apartment, cozy, down in Miami Beach, and just go to the beach and then come back to my apartment and bang out my radio show.
Right.
I was making a really good living. And with my Social Security, I'd be living super comfortably on Miami Beach with girls 40 years younger than me going by on roller skates and bikinis. And, like, to me, like, I could be a beach bum. So this is the negative side of being a beach bum. Like, all of a sudden, I'm really lazy. I gained a lot of weight. And I just ordered those fucking rubber bands because I'm like, I gotta stop. Like, you gotta wake up one day and say, I'm gonna do this. That's it. I gotta do something. I can't.
Well, I see you've been posting salads and stuff on your Instagram, so I know you're trying.
Yeah, but did you see that sandwich I posted last night?
No, that I missed.
Oh my God, it was a one sandwich heart attack.
It's like a corned beef Katz sandwich or something?
No, it was from Russo's Italian Deli. It was Italian bread with seeds, soft, not the hard, and fresh salted mozzarella. But I put olive oil on the bread, and then I put, believe it or not, I put prosciutto in the microwave for 30 seconds just to warm it, and then I chopped up a bunch of pieces of fresh hard soppressata.
Yeah.
And I put that in the microwave so it gets crunchy like chips. And then I put
wow.
Rob, take notes. You eat like that.
Red
I
peppers.
know. I love Russo's. Russo's sandwich are the best.
Oh yeah, those guys. I've been going in there for 30 years.
Yeah.
I got in a fight with the guy the other day. First time in 30 years. I had to call the owner up. And complain. He was totally on my side.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into this. All right. I'm going to give a little background here for anybody who maybe doesn't know who you are. Okay. Handsome Dick Manitoba was in the Dictators. He was also in Manitoba's Wild Kingdom. He played a little bit with the MC5 when they reformed. He's a bar owner, Manitoba's, from 1999 until last year. You also released a solo album this year. Well, actually 2019, I should say, the end of last year.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk all about that. But right now,
and Dictators, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Dictators NYC, which is
and
a
Dictators
great
NYC.
version.
Right.
Great version of the Dictators.
Yes, yes. I did see that. Was that the version in 2015 when you played Bowery Electric on New Year's? That was
You
Dictators
know what?
NYC, right?
We were Manitoba. We were
Mm-hmm.
Manitoba NYC. We were Dictators NYC. It
Right.
was like we kept trying different things. What wound up happening is the same band, the same music, the same energy, the same show.
Sure.
I'll tell you how important branding is these days.
Of course.
Branding is everything. Because
Yep.
once we put the word Dictators, it could have been the Dictators garbage pickup service, you know? But
Yeah.
that would have sold. But
Well,
but Manitoba NYC didn't. It was the same band.
yeah, it's the same guys.
It's
Yeah.
all branding.
Well, it has to do with hashtagging and Twitter and Instagram and putting the right thing up and getting it to the right people. That's really what that branding is all about these days,
Yeah.
Now, let's go back in time a little bit. Okay, we're going to go back to early 70s. And this was a time when, you were from the Bronx and you were doing Quaaludes by the bunch, like you said. Okay. Now, the Dictators.
How many people know what Quaaludes are?
Yes.
Not too many.
Not too many. Not too many, but it was a hell of a drug, right?
Oh, my second favorite.
Okay. So the band was formed in 72 by Andy Chernoff and Ross the Boss, Scott Top 10 Kempner,
Yeah.
Stu Boy. Now, originally, you were somewhat of the roadie, right?
I was the best friend of the band.
Best
So
hanging out.
they had to throw me a bone. So I
Mhm.
said, I'll be roadie.
Now, were you going by the name Handsome Dick Manitoba at that point?
Don't think so quite yet. I don't think it caught on for a couple of more years, so maybe 73, 74.
Right.
Maybe.
What was the origin of that? Can you give a little story how you got that name?
Very easy. I'm a big I'm a big wrestling fan. I still love professional wrestling.
Right.
Although I've become a bigger UFC fan. And I always liked heels, not baby faces. And
Yes.
my favorite heel was the Valiant Brothers heels. The Valiant with Lou Albano, handsome Jimmy Valiant. They came strutting out with their long dyed blonde hair and their shiny jackets going, yo, baby, I'm the best in the world. Oh, shut up. And they point to the guys doing,
Wow,
shut
yeah,
the hell
handsome
up.
Jimmy Valiant. I haven't heard that name in years, man. That guy was great.
I heard him. We went to see them live, and we sat like ringside. I heard him point at a guy, go, "Shut up, boy, sit down." And it was like, I was like, these guys are fucking nuts. And I thought I've met everybody over the years. I've never been so intimidated by going backstage and seeing those two guys walking down the hallway toward me. I was like, humma, 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 humma. I was like fucking intimidated. So I just loved handsome Jimmy Valiant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the only problem with handsome Dick is it begs to have jokes,
Yeah,
handsome.
the sexual reference. Yeah.
Well, you look it up online. Half of it is homoerotica,
Right.
and so I would have been better off been like, Broadway Dick Manitoba or Hollywood Dick Manitoba,
Yeah. Well,
It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's how I got it. Manitoba, we just like sort of, like the Dictators. We went through 50 names, and when we hit the Dictators, it was like that's it. And when we hit Manitoba, we just like the sound of it, aesthetically, and no big deal. That's it.
No, and it works, and it stuck with you all these years. So it wasn't like you had to change it; it worked. Now, when did you kind of go from the roadie to them giving you an opportunity to sing? Now, because on the first album, Go Girl Crazy, that came out in 75, I believe, you're labeled on that as the secret weapon of the band. Like, what was the joke behind that? I'm sure there's something there.
Well, since I was not a musician and not a, quote, singer, unquote, but since every time I got up and held the microphone, things got a lot more exciting on stage than I don't even like saying his name, but things got a lot more exciting than the lead singer, who just he just got out of the hospital. He had a charisma operation. They try to put a charisma in him, and it didn't take, so he's still the same old guy. But you know, it's like I could tell you lots of very, very respected people in the music business who said, you know, you should give Richard the microphone more often, simply because what happens when he has the microphone. Now,
Well,
the first time I sang "Wild Thing," the great Chip Taylor song done by the Trogs,
Frogs,
and
yep.
and uh, and I sang it at a place called Popeye's Spinach Factory, Emmons
In
Avenue,
Brooklyn, right?
Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Chris Stein was there, and Eric Emerson, who was in the band called the Magic Tramps, a part of the
Yes.
Andy Warhol crew. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and as the years go by, it's one of those stories. I was there, and everybody was there. And I got up and I did a drunk wild thing, and people went twice as crazy. So after a while, Murray Krugman and God rest his soul, Sandy Perlman,
Right.
who ran Blue Oyster Cult and were
Right.
managing and producing us, decided, you know, Richard's got to get more and more and more. They just thought that I was this insane beast with no limitations, which I was, and that was punk rock. That was rock and roll.
But the thing is, it was punk rock, but there was no name punk rock for it. Okay, the term didn't really exist at that point, which kind of gets me to my next question. All right, because Legs McNeil and John Holstrom, who started Punk Magazine in the mid-'70s, claimed that their biggest influences was Mad Magazine and the Dictators' Go Girl Crazy album.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the inspiration to make that magazine. And since, you know, the term punk rock hadn't really been invented yet, they actually called your album, and I'm sure it was very fondly called Retard Rock.
Okay. I never heard that.
Yeah, it's true. I've heard Legs McNeil say that. Now, how influential do you think Go Girl Crazy was to the early scene at CB's and even Max's Kansas City, like the clubs around that time?
Well, judging by sales overall, it's a very uninfluential. Judging by, you know, we got an album out, and in that scene, it was a fledgling new scene on a place that had never seen anything but drunks and you know, Christian missions.
Bowery bums and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
and all of a sudden, you know, limousines are pulling up, and we were the first band to have a full length album out on a major label, and so we got attention, and there were people. I would say there were people that loved it and people that hated it, but I wouldn't say there was a ton of people that loved it right off the bat. Got some really bad reviews, and those who loved it absolutely loved it.
Well, you know, it's one of those albums, and it's one of my all-time favorite albums of all time. I would put it in my probably top 15 greatest albums of all time. And it's one of those albums to me that it kind of almost like the Velvet Underground. Like, not too many people bought their records, but it seems like everybody who did started the band. Same with the Ramones. Okay. You guys kind of like were a catalyst to that. Now, I know even, you know, you were like a year ahead of everybody in a way. Okay. I mean, because really, I guess you guys had an album out. Patti Smith had an album out. That was about it, really, right? Everybody was like 76 and after that.
Right.
So, you know, you were doing that thing a year before everybody, and it wasn't even a title, punk rock. There was no genre. It was just rock and roll, and, you know, or retard rock, however you want to look at it. Okay. But, you know, you were signed to Epic, and then unfortunately, you know, the sales, I guess, made them drop you.
Yes.
Is that what happened? Okay.
Pretty accurate.
Not too long after that, though, Asylum Records would pick you up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now that was originally founded by David Geffen, that label. And the second album that you guys were going to be making was called Manifest Destiny. And it was released in 77. Now, the album to me was a little more serious and a little bit heavier in some ways. I think there was some criticism on your first album that it really wasn't taken seriously. I don't agree with that, but, you know, that's what I've read in different things. Do you feel that was like an attempt to be more serious with that second album?
Well, the first album was like every other bunch of guys standing on every street corner. We're the coolest motherfuckers in the world. let's start a band. We're gonna be the coolest motherfucking band in the world.
Yeah.
And we went out. We did what we thought was funny,
Right.
and what we thought represented our lifestyle, and we let it fly. It was sort of, we used to have this this fanzine called Teenage Wasteland Gazette, named after the Who song,
Yeah.
and Bob
Nice.
O'Reilly, and
Right.
that was the literary version of the Dictators. So
Yeah.
the Dictators, you know, we were sort of devastated that, you know, it was a abysmal failure economically, and we got dropped right away.
Yeah.
So then, I guess Murray, Sandy, I don't remember exactly how it happened. All of us got together. We have to be bigger and stronger. We have to make more money. We have to play in arenas. So that was
Yeah.
like our attempt at being, you know, like having soft songs, powerful songs, and trying to be, you can see by the cover, an arena rock. So we just immediately sort of ditched the first album and tried to be something different on the second album.
Well, the way that I kind of look at it, maybe you can tell me if it's true or not, is like with the first album, you had songs like Next Big Thing, Weekend, Teen Generate, I Got You, Babe. Now, I Got You, Babe, your cover of that is so fucking funny and just like ironic in so many ways because you sing it alone and the song is a duet. So I always found that to be like hilarious that you were just doing it to yourself.
No,
like,
we sang it together, me and Andy.
Yeah, because it's really.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Well, your voices sometimes sound close, but it seemed more like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong all these years. I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah.
but then again, my memory and my age, you know. No, I think Andy started it off.
Maybe, but it always seemed like it was more just you singing it. I guess maybe you traded off the lyrics. I never realized.
Yeah, I think we traded stuff off. I know I came in. You could tell, like, you know, like they say we're young and we don't know.
Right.
Don't find out until we go. And then I went, well, I don't know if all that's true. Yeah.
Well, it's still, regardless, it's a great version of the song. You and Joe Ramone did a great version of it too. Now, with the first album, it was more of like, to me, a teenage album. You know, you talk about doing your homework in the bar, you know, and like stuff, lyrics like that. But then when you got to the second album, tracks like Science Gone Too Far, Young, Fast, and Scientific, you know, it was a little bit different vibe. Okay. It was kind of like a less of a teen kind of thing and a little more serious. That's the way I always kind of took it. And the version of Search and Destroy is fantastic, by the way. Okay, you guys always did that great live.
Well, Young, Fast, Scientific was just an homage to professional wrestling.
Oh,
like we were sort of making fun of them, like, you know, this guy, he's fat. We hated those kind of wrestlers. He's fast and scientific, you know.
Yeah.
We like guys that would gouge your eyes out, you know.
Wow.
Like George the Animal Steel.
Even worse, the Sheik.
Oh, the Sheik. The Sheik was great.
Yeah, he throw fire in your eyes.
I knew you guys would hit it off with the wrestling.
I'm a huge wrestling fan. I used to go to the Garden back in so I grew up in Hell's Kitchen as a kid, and my uncle was a custodian at Madison Square Garden. And when there was wrestling match, I used to go back there, meet those guys, and the most terrifying guy I ever saw was Andre the Giant. He was the nicest guy, but he scared the shit out of me. I was hiding behind my old man like a child.
He's like 7'5".
He was a monster.
I used to like to read what he ate for breakfast.
What was that?
Something like, you know, like a dozen eggs, a loaf of bread, you know, a pound of bacon.
Oh my God. You ever heard the story how they got his surgery, where he did that surgery for WrestleMania 3? They had to figure out how much he drank so they could get him the anesthesia to knock him out during surgery.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Never heard that.
Yeah, It's crazy. So you know how much he drank. They would say he would drink like 4 or 5 cases of beer, and then he would drive everybody home.
It was insane, yeah.
Okay, so the Manifest Destiny album came out in 77, but then in 78, you guys released Blood Brothers, okay? And again, that was produced by Perlman and Krugman. This was the first album that you sang all the songs, right?
I guess so, or most of the songs. I don't remember.
I think you did sing them all on that.
Yeah.
Now that album cover is a classic. I think it's iconic. You guys on the playground, the silhouette of you guys, it's just a simple cover. The Dictators logo. I think that's just classic. I had a T-shirt of that for years. Whose idea was that for the cover?
It's probably a band idea. That's a playground. I grew up in a city housing project. And this was 5 blocks south where like I had like 20 friends in this project. And the great writer, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a great writer, Richard Price. He comes
he wrote Clockers.
He wrote Clockers. He wrote The Wanderers. He wrote The Wire.
Yeah.
He wrote.
I've read a few of his books.
Yeah. He wrote Lush Life.
Wow.
He's an amazing guy. So anyway, he grew up there. I was in the bowling league with his younger brother. He was like 4 years older than me. I'm still in touch with Richard. And you know, that was the playground where after school we went to play basketball. And then it rained that night, and the ground was slick, and it added a dimension. Like at first you go, "Oh shit, it's raining," and then when you see the picture and you see it adds this almost like shiny dimension.
Yes.
That you don't realize. Like, so sometimes what you think is bad is good.
Yeah. Wait, you got to see how it comes out. I never knew that about the rain, but now that I'm thinking of the cover, it does have kind of like a shimmering kind of look to it.
And that was Parkside Playground in the Bronx.
Right. And one thing that always stuck out is you get a good silhouette of your afro.
Yeah, the good old afro. Give me that afro back.
I mean, you had the biggest afro I've ever seen on a white guy.
I know. Okay. Well, who else was a Magic Dick had a big afro?
How much work did you have to put into that thing every day?
Oh, nothing. What do you mean work? What do you think? I was like, I would wake up in the morning.
You didn't pick at it.
I had a pick, but I rarely used it. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd take my 4 fingers on each hand, and I'd pull it out all over, and I'd sort of pull down the sides, and I would just shake it, and I'd come home with like twigs in my fucking hair, and like
now, I don't know.
That shit caught stuff.
When you guys played New Year's Eve 2015 into 2016 at Bowery Electric, I was there with a friend of mine and my wife. Okay. And my wife is from Haiti. Okay. So I asked her to get, and she has dreadlocks. She doesn't wear an afro, but I asked her to get an afro wig. Okay. And she did. And she wore it that night. She was in front of you for a little while. I don't know if you noticed her, but she had the big black afro. And I'm like, yeah, do it for Handsome Dick. Have an afro for the show.
That's funny because in Spain, we were playing on Halloween night, and our promoter got me an afro wig. I wore it for like 4 songs.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Now, the Blood Brothers album, what do you remember kind of making about this? I mean, again, it was another heavy album, a little more serious. Faster and Louder was the opening track. So my question's kind of 2-part. What do you remember about making that album? And is it true that Bruce Springsteen actually goes 1, 2, 3, 4 counts off Faster and Louder?
Of course.
Is that true?
Yeah.
What was his connection with the band?
Well, there was a legendary place in Midtown West Side, 45th, 44th Street record plant, where some of the greatest albums ever made were made there. And Bruce was in, like, let's say, Studio A, making Darkness on the Edge of Town. And then, like, down the hall, like 30 feet down the hall, we were, like, in Studio B or C, making Blood Brothers. So, there was a common area of couches and VHS players. And so we would basically, like Bruce and them, they were like, they had money, they were famous, and we didn't have money, we weren't famous, but they're hanging out. It's like a Jersey bunch of guys in a band, Bronx bunch of guys in a band, and we're hanging out, laughing, and getting to know each other and liking each other. We got along very well. Bruce even called us into the studio one night and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he played Candy's Room for us. I was like, "Oh fuck, it's a good song. It's a good song, Bruce." Wow. Even if I didn't like it, what am I going to say? Nah, you can do better than that, Bruce.
Of course, you're going to say you love it.
But I did love it, and that album is fantastic. And so we saw each other every day for like 30 days. So, Bruce, come in and do something in the studio. So like, the song builds up, 1, 2, 3, 4, so he did
Yeah.
that, you can hear him. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, it's funny because I never knew that. And when I listened to it recently, I was like, yeah, that is him. I don't know why I never knew that. And he obviously you didn't credit him or anything, but even on and he was kind of getting around in '78 with different bands that were kind of underground at the time, like you guys. And then also he's on Lou Reed's Street Hassle that same year. He does that one verse in the title track. I don't know if you know
No,
that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
came
I don't
up
know
on stage after 3 nights at the Garden.
Mhm.
He played 3 nights at the Palladium, I think it was, and he came up
Right.
on stage and played a show, and went off stage, and people, Bruce, and he switches into a Dictators T-shirt, and he says, "This one's for HD and the boys," and he plays "Born to Run."
Oh,
And
nice.
you
Wow.
got to understand something. I went to the Garden one night to see Bruce. It's a bunch of years back with my friends who were very successful accountants and lawyers, Bruce fanatics, and I'm telling my friend about this story that I just told you. And he goes home and
Hmm.
he's got like hundreds of cassette tapes, and he pulls the
Right.
cassette tape out of that fucking night. And I take it up to Steven's
Wow.
office and I have it turned into a CD. So I have a CD of that whole show. Yeah.
That whole thing. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, you guys would break up after this album, right? Dictators would break
Yeah.
up. Uh, and in 1981, Raw Records released the "Fuck 'Em If They Can't Take a Joke" album. Okay, and this was my introduction to you guys. That was the first thing I ever heard. Okay, from you guys, and your intro, the live stuff. When you start that album, the way you're yelling at the audience and everything, it's just nuts. Okay, and there were two tracks that you guys introduced with that particular album: the New York, and Loyola.
Yeah.
Right now, New York, that would become an instant classic, and you would do that later on with Manitoba's Wild Kingdom, okay, which you started around '86, right? Um, at that point, when that album came out, when you got that band together, the Party Starts Now was kind of a big hit on MTV. I remember seeing the video. I remember being like, "Wow, this is a great fucking song," and you guys were kind of that song was wedged in between, hair metal bands on MTV. It would be on like I don't think they had Headbangers Ball yet, but it was like shows like that. All of a sudden, I'd see you on MTV, and I was like, "Wow," And then the album came out, and you had New York, New York. You brought back for that. That was the album called "And You?" Question mark. And you like that. Um, were you surprised at some of the success of Manitoba's Wild Kingdom with that, like with the video? Did you think that could happen?
I didn't, I've just been used to I put 3 albums out and, nothing. So I wasn't, I was,
Were you just
I
making
wasn't,
music for
yeah, no,
yourself
I
at that
wasn't sitting
point?
there thinking like this is going to be but the record business, you had guys patting you on the back saying, buy that condo
Yeah,
for your parents in Florida. There's going to be a big hit. 3 weeks later, we're at a convention in like, Texas, and they're like totally ignoring us. That's the fucking record business. They'll pat you on the back.
sure.
It was a radio hit. It was DJs all over the country. Friday afternoon would play "The Party Starts Now." Happy weekend and have a great weekend.
Yeah, it's like a
But it
weekend
didn't.
song.
It
Sure,
didn't
sure.
transfer. It didn't go through to the street. So again, we didn't sell any
Yeah,
records.
but you got some critical recognition of it because Rolling Stone called it like the first great punk rock album of the
Oh, that's
'90s.
nice.
Yeah, you never
I
knew that.
might have.
Yeah.
I might have forgotten it.
Well, I agree because I played the shit out of it when I got.
That's a good record.
I
I like
remember I
that
was.
record.
It is. It is. Um, Now, after Manitoba's Wild Kingdom, you kind of went in different directions. And in a few years after that, you would open your bar, Manitoba's, on Avenue B near 7th Street. Now, what got you into the bar business? What made you interested in doing something like that? Because that's a lot of work on top of, being a musician and
I
stuff.
was bartending, and people were coming to visit me. They found out, oh, I worked in this bar, so I'd get some fairly regular visits from people from states and countries, and I started thinking, like, I'm chinging for somebody else. Why don't I put together a package and get my own bar and make it like a dictator's
Right.
rock and roll? Because CBGB's is
Yeah.
closed. This
Yeah.
could be a little bit of a historical thing. So after
Right.
about 2 years, I got rid of my partner, and I put, like, dozens and dozens and dozens of pictures on the wall and posters, and
I remember.
I'm selling them now to eat. And um, you can go on my Instagram page, see what's available. Anyway,
Right.
so um, I always want to do more. I don't like to sit still. Like, I don't like to do one thing. I can't sit in a desk and do a job 5 days a week. I just can't. That's not in my. It's not
Right.
in me. So, I like to do like 4 things at once: check up on the bar, go watch a Yankee game at the bar, go do my radio show, go on the road for 3 weeks to Europe. So that's the bar was just like it was a clubhouse to me. It was a clubhouse, and it was a place that people could come, like, from England, and say, and like 5 guys
Yeah.
would come in the bar and go, "We're from England. This is a great bar. Makes us feel like a
Yeah.
home bar." Um, and
Right.
that was it. The only problem was I wasn't a great bar businessman. I was a good bar get people in, but I wasn't a great bar businessman. Like, you really, like, you have to be. It's a business like a restaurant. You have to be married to it. You have to keep an eye on it every day, all day, and it was too small. If it was bigger, like twice the size, I could pay somebody $800-900 a week, manage it, someone I trusted, and then just, I can afford that, and then I can just
Right.
bring people in. I don't have to count fucking quarter of a bottle of vodka versus an
Yeah.
eighth of a bottle of vodka, and I was just not good at it. So, and because we couldn't hire someone to do all that work I didn't want to do, it was a roller coaster. It was up and down, up and
Well,
down, up and down.
you did hang on for 20 years, which is
Yeah,
longer than a lot of
no,
places
and
that do these days. And I think a lot of it was notoriety. Okay, your name, and also you know I used to go there a lot in the early years, and what I loved about it was just the music. Okay, you were playing fantastic playlists all the time. I get drunk and whatever, and that's to me that's what I look for in bars. I look for like good jukeboxes and things like that. And you always had great music going, and it was a good vibe there. In the early years for a long time, I enjoyed it.
well, for a couple of years we
But
did real good, and that was when
yeah,
my son's mother took over. But she had a lot of the wrong kind of friends, and she didn't do
right,
very well in that environment, if you know what I mean. And I had to choose, like,
yeah,
if I left her in there, it would have been like not good, but there would have been money in the bar, more money. If I didn't leave her in there,
right.
it wasn't good for the bar, but it might have helped the family. But in the end, none of it worked.
Hey, well, it's
Yeah,
fucking life, man.
yeah,
Sometimes. But in the early like late '90s, early 2000s, you guys were ready to come out with another Dictators album, and in 2001, you came out with probably what I would say is I think it's your best album, honestly. Is the DFFD, Dictators Forever,
yeah.
Forever Dictators. And I consider this album a masterpiece. I really do. Okay, and there's the one track, "Who Will Save Rock and Roll," that to me is just it's up there with some of the best songs I've ever heard. Savage Beat is great. What's Up with That? I love that one. In the Presence of a New God, but in "Who Will Save Rock and Roll," just the album starts with that, and when I first heard it, blew my mind. Now there is one particular lyric in that song I got to ask you about because we could probably do a whole podcast just on this topic. And "Who Will Save Rock and Roll?" You have the one line that says, "June 1st, '67, something died and went to heaven. I wish Sergeant Pepper never taught the band to play." All right. Now, I take that as you shitting on the Beatles a little bit. Can you
I didn't
talk
write it,
about that a little bit?
I
You
didn't
didn't
write
write
any
that lyric?
lyrics.
Okay. Okay, so what was the meaning of
My
that lyric?
guess is that it was the Beatles got like sort of very artsy
Mm-hmm.
and super creative
Yep.
and took everything maybe out of the neck down and put it in the neck up, which is like Bob Dylan territory. But I might be totally
Right.
wrong. I don't know what.
No, I took it almost very much like that. Like Lester Bangs had one of his writings. He said how after Sergeant Pepper came out, that rock and roll all of a sudden was taken seriously. Like prior to that, it was for teenagers. It was kind of like for retards and juvenile delinquents and shit like that. And then when Sergeant Pepper came out, all of a sudden it was like, oh, now it's an art form. Now I agree with that mostly. It's not totally accurate, but when I heard that lyric, I knew that was touching on that, and that always stuck with me. But do you agree with that at all? That like at that point after Sergeant Pepper came out, rock and roll was treated more seriously, kind of almost as an art form, or not? What do you think?
Well, it's a two question. Hold on one second. Mix this up in my blender.
Sure.
Sorry. And
No problem.
Right, brother.
my meal replacement fucking blender drink. Anyway, well, there's a two-pronged thing you're saying here. You're asking me to respond to people that said like that was the end of rock and roll as we knew it, and it changed into something else. Do I agree with that? That was a great example of rock and roll moving to another direction, especially it was done by the greatest band there ever was. So they're leading the pack.
Right.
On the other hand, I think everybody falls in love with something that they fall in love with, and they don't want it to change, which is selfish. Which is like I
Right.
don't want it to change. I
Right.
want it to stay this way forever, the way I know it, the way I think it should be. And I think it a musical genre evolved. It evolved, and if you don't think it evolved for the better, okay. Me, I do, because I think now we have the old stuff we love, and now we have this whole new thing to check out.
Right.
So
Right. Right. I couldn't agree with you more. I think like it definitely changed rock and roll, the perspective that people had of rock and roll. Okay. It was taken a little more seriously, almost as an art form. But eventually it would all come full circle with punk rock later on, 10 years later. And, everything kind of like
yeah.
recirculates itself, and comes back again. So I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. After that album came out, you guys played around for a couple of years with it and everything. You were touring behind it a little bit. But then you got involved with the reformed MC5. I think that was about 2005. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that you've been on record for many times in interviews as a big MC5 fan. So you were kind of filling Rob Tyner, who had passed away. You were filling his shoes. Can you talk about that? What that was like?
I was in the pouring rain leaving a supermarket with my son in his carriage with the plastic over him. And I get a call from Wayne Kramer while I'm smoking a cigarette and blowing it behind me so as not to get in my son's face. And Wayne's going, listen, we have this tour. It's 2.5, 3 weeks of Europe, 6 different countries or whatever. And, 22 shows, whatever. And would you be interested in doing it? I said, well, let me go home and ask the boss. And she said, of course you should go. And I went. But the reason he called me was because they had been in New York doing a show at the Bowery Ballroom. And there were a few guest stars that came up. And I came up and did 2 songs. And the Village Voice said Handsome Dick Manitoba practically stole the show. So I thought that went a long
Wow.
way toward me. That they had a list of MC5 friendly musicians and singers, and I was now on that list. And I did those bunch of shows. I did a few songs at Central Park, a set at a record store in L.A., the Casbah in San Diego, UCLA, Rose Hall, blah, blah, blah. So about 30,
Right.
35 shows with them all together. And it was an honor. Basically, the way I
Wow.
put it is Wayne Kramer called me up just in a nutshell and said, how would you like to get paid to travel around Europe and sing Kick Out the Jams? I was like, I'd like that, Wayne. I'd like that. I'll take you up on that.
Sure.
Wow.
That's great. And I was following that a little bit, reading about the European shows. They were pretty well received.
I had a blast. I never traveled in a bus like that, country to
Yeah.
country. I loved it. It was a great experience.
What was the country you think was the best to play in Europe? As
Oh
that
man, I don't remember. I remember doing one in Germany where I had to follow Lemmy because Lemmy was in one of the tents, and like on one side was like Rage Against the Machine in front of like 20,000 people, and the other side was like 8,000 people, and that was our side, and I didn't want to fucking follow Lemmy, and he came up.
Yeah, right.
He comes up.
That's hard to do.
God damn it! Hold on 1 second. He comes up and he says, I'm so glad I'm living in the USA. And he comes up singing that.
Yep.
It's like I fucking didn't want to walk on stage after that. And
yeah, well, I mean, you know what? Lemmy was on record many times saying the MC5
no,
was
he
like
said
his
the Beatles
favorite
were.
band of all time. Oh, yeah, actually true. But he also said the MC5 were like really influential. Yeah.
Me and Joey
He loved
Ramone in the World Trade Center, we interviewed him because Joey said, hey, Dick, you're really good in talking and come on, help me do this interview of Lemmy. I said, no problem, Joey. So we go down there.
Was that when I'm trying to remember. Was that when it might have been later on. Do you remember when Joey had that Z-Rock show?
Yes.
Like around 90, 91, something like that. You were on
sure
that
I guess
show, right?
On
I
it
think
once.
I have 2 90-minute cassettes of those shows, but the problem is I don't have a cassette player anymore.
Go on eBay for $5.
I have to, yeah, I need to get like a little Panasonic, thing that we used to record off the radio kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to listen to them again because I'm pretty sure you're a guest on one. I think the first song he played when he had that show was "Kick Out the Jams," and then "Next Big Thing," like right after that.
Joey was very,
if I remember
very loving, loyal friend to the Dictators. We came up together,
right. Oh, I know. And I'm going to talk about Joey a little bit in a minute, but I just wanted to, the time you were starting with the MC5, playing around with them, was around the time you started with your radio show, on Little Steven's Underground Garage. That was a great show. I used to listen to it often. What was it like going from kind of like singer to being a DJ? It seems like it's such a different dynamic because you're not just concentrating on your own music, but you're kind of thinking of others as well. So did they let you program your own stuff? Or,
Steven's
what
channel
went into that
is computer programmed. If I showed you, to make the closest analogy I could say is if you got a loose leaf with tabs, and each tab had a different genre or subgenre, and then
yeah.
8 pages of certain music, and then there was a soup recipe or a chili recipe, which said every 4-hour show. I did 4-hour shows. Everyone else did 3. Every 4-hour show there has to be 1 Ramone song or 2 Ramone songs, 1 or 2 Bird songs, 1 or 2 Beatles songs, 1 or 2 Stone songs.
Yeah.
And then then you pick from this era, this like the 50s, 60s, this type of music, this type of music. So it was really mixed around, and then you always had about 30% of new bands or more on, and And
Yeah.
that's the way that went. But I'll tell you a good analogy of how to do that. It's like Robert De Niro acting, right? Robert De Niro is a great actor, and he has this personality
Right.
that comes across strong. And if you watch him, you see a lot of, even in the comedy is the same as Goodfellas. Like, is it the same, power and violence? No, but he takes his Robert De Niro thing and he applies it. He applies it to different things in the world. This is a different job doing a comedy, but I'm still Robert De Niro. So what I did was figure
Yeah.
out, how do I become Dick Manitoba that runs a bar that's on stage? It's not this. It's a different craft, but how do I apply the craft, which is me talking and me entertaining people, but it's a slightly different craft.
Right.
So, it takes a little while. The first few shows I listened to weren't that great, but after a while, I got fluid and lucid and relaxed. I would make mistakes and I wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
fix them. I would just make fun of myself, and yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Well, that's what we do. That's what we do here, Richard. Okay, like on our podcast, we just kind of like we leave in the mistakes
It's human.
because it's our personalities coming through, and I think that
it's very human.
And your show was definitely human for sure. I mean, it was fun, and your personality is very strong. It goes through. I think
So
it
do
worked
I,
great. I
but
wish it was
no,
still on.
Stephen. I screwed up with the boss, and I could say whatever I want. He treated me great. He was a great guy for 40 years, and then
Right.
everybody's different. Look, you can have everything's a relationship. Your friend is a relationship. Your mother and father, your girlfriend, your wife, your kids. It's all relationships, and everybody acts the way they act based on who they are. Like, personally, my vote was, I feel that I got really hammered for the few things that I might have done wrong. And Steve didn't agree with me. He's the boss. And that was that. But, it was a great 40-year friendship.
Yeah. Well, you just agree to disagree, I guess, and you go separate
So,
ways,
Mike,
right?
let's talk about the new album. Let's get down to business. Talk about the new album. Talk about his podcast. Talk about his Patreons also. So, because he got a lot of things going on.
Oh yeah. Okay. Real quick before we talk about that, we were talking about the Ramones. Okay, now you guys were you've always had a great friendship with Joey, and like you said, you came up through together. What is it you miss the most about them now?
What I miss the most, well, beside having Joey live like a couple of blocks away from me, and hey, how you doing? What's up? What are you doing? And just missing him as a personality and a buddy in the neighborhood, and being Joey. You couldn't walk down the street without Joey. I was unrecognized. You walk down the street with Joey. He's also, a very unique looking human being.
Right.
And
of course,
Tommy, I was pals with. We had the same birthday, and Tommy's a really smart, quiet guy. I got along good with him. Dee Dee, I got along with Dee Dee, but Dee Dee was, he had his wackadoo problems, so I wasn't too close with him. And and Johnny,
Dee Dee was,
kept to himself guy to me, but he was very respectful and friendly. So I always knew, like, I see Johnny backstage, go see the Ramones play, and the first thing I'd say is, Johnny, what do you think it is? And I'd mention something specific about the Yankees because he was a diehard Yankee fan. So am I. So we talk.
Big Yankee fan.
Me too, big Yankee fan.
We talk, and he'd say, "Good to see you, Dick," and that was it. But Joey was my buddy. Like, we had dinner over each other's houses, and he lived like 3 blocks away from me.
Yeah.
And what I miss about them as a band is what I miss about all the great bands as a band. Like, I wonder what the Clash would be doing. I wonder what the Ramones would be doing. I wonder what Fill in the Blank would be doing.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's true. You don't know what they'd be doing. It's a mystery, unfortunately. And Joey's missed to this day. I knew him a little bit. He was a great guy. I miss his little shows he would put on at the Continental or CB's or something like that.
Always
He was
doing
always
a party,
helping out new bands. Yeah. Yeah. Now let's
Yeah.
talk about your new album that's out. Okay. In November, you released your first solo album on the Handsome Dick Manitoba, called "Born in the Bronx." Now, I listened to this album a couple of times, and it seems to me it's kind of like a self-reflective kind of album in some ways. You're talking about your Bronx roots, but then you're even hinting at some other things like drug abuse, like the
Yeah.
cooker and the hit
Don't forget,
song.
me and Ross put a song out before
And
that. The single
what was that?
called Supply and Demand. And I
Yes,
ran
I
into
do
Dave
remember that.
Marsh,
Yes.
who wrote
Yeah.
about
Okay.
40 books on rock and roll
Mm-hmm.
history, and is an absolutely brilliant guy whose wife manages Bruce Springsteen, co-managers. And he goes, Richard, that song's a fucking
Mm-hmm.
masterpiece. And I go, come on, Dave, it's a good, solid rock tune. He goes,
Yeah.
no, it's a masterpiece, he called. I said,
No, it is
okay,
a good
thank
song.
you.
Yeah. Well, with the new album, okay,
Yeah.
you worked with
Yeah.
a guy named John Tiven, I understand. Okay. Can you talk about what went into this album a little bit for a few minutes, and just we can talk about
Okay, well,
how people can get it or
I was
plug
at
it
a
for.
party and someone said, hey, I'm friends with John Tiven. I said, John Tiven? Haven't heard his name in years. In the 70s, he and Andy were sort of like friendly enemies with different fanzines. And we opened up for the Stooges once, and he said to Andy, why don't you just let Richard be the lead singer? I mean, people just go, and Andy does not like hearing that because Andy wants to own all the airspace around the Dictators. And it's not fair because Ross put in 43 years, Scott put
Yeah.
in 40 years, I put in 45 years. It's not fair for one person to do that. But anyway, that's the way
Right.
personalities are. And, I was always like, I was always like the sidekick, and Richard's not to be taken seriously. Andy never liked the way I worked or treated my craft, although it seemed like a lot of other people did. We should have just got along great, and he did what he did, and I did what I did, and it was none of his business. But it's his songs, and he was getting tired of. You don't know this, but DFFD, it was rejected because it was a jerk off album. He was
Really?
jerking off in the studio with some girl doing 3 songs on the record. I had like 2 songs on the record, and all our promoters all over the world were like, "What's this? What?" So he wrote 3 more like hard rock, Handsome Dick songs, and the album came out. So whatever was for years, look, I'm not blaming it all on them, but they weren't great people to be around to pat you on the back or to be like if I came up with a few lines. Now let me tell you something. People were laughing at my lines I came up with about in the 1980s, and I kept some of those lines. John Tiven is fucking brilliant. Andy could talk about working on 80 albums. John
Right.
Tiven worked on 60 albums. He did Wilson Pickett's last record. He did Steve Cropper is a good friend of his, and he's worked with one of the all-time geniuses in our music history, Steve Cropper. Okay, he worked with Don Covey, Mercy Mercy, Arthur Alexander, Anna Come Home to Him that the Beatles covered, and like 45 other great artists. He plays 7 instruments, and he got together with me. I said, I got some ideas for songs.
Right.
I'd sit in this tiny telephone booth up at Sirius doing my show, and then I'd stop for 10 or 15 minutes because I could, as long as I did my show in time, it was cool. So I'd stop for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'd write lines. So I'd give him like 15, 16 lines, and he would maybe move one around and say, Richard, do me a favor, write a 3-part bridge right here, and blah, blah, blah. The next day, I swear to you, the next day I'd wake up, and he plays 7 instruments, and he has a studio in his house in Nashville. There'd be a song. Now, was it the final song? No, but it was a song. And we kept doing that. And when you say it's all introspective, it's not such a retrospective album. It's an everything album. It's a me soup to nuts because, listen, there's a song about Plan 9 from outer space, okay? Right. There's 3 songs about girls.
That's true.
There's a song about heroin addiction. There's a song about, this is the one line I wrote in the 80s and nobody paid attention. I'm trying to watch Kojak on my TV, but the cops busting dudes outside is more fun to see. That comes from me renting a tiny room in someone's apartment on Avenue B in the 80s and looking out the window and seeing the cops flying on the sidewalk trying to catch someone. And I wrote a song about how my TV is my best friend. It's never let me down. And, so I wrote an ode to I wrote about Magenta Park, really tough playground near my house. So it was a really, like the Yankees and Yankee Stadium. And, it was a lot, the Bronx and girls and a movie. And see, what you really got to realize, the surfing song, what you really got to realize, a lot of people don't realize, is there are reference points in there to like comic books, wrestling, other songs. I quoted Brian Wilson like 3 times in one song, So to me, it was like a really great soup to nuts version of me. And at 65 when it came out, white guy 65 putting out a rock record on a tiny, tiny, tiny little label. No one's gonna fucking beat the drum for me. But the way I look at it is, very few people have heard it. So to me, if I bang the drum in 6 months, it's like a new album. I had 6. Listen, all of a sudden, the guy who couldn't write a song put 13. I had 6 left over. I had 19 songs, and then I got 7 more songs on my cell phone. I have like 24 more songs.
Right.
At least.
You got a whole another album, 2 albums.
So all of a sudden, I'm a songwriter. Well, at least
all right. Well,
lyricist.
Yeah. Well, listen, Richard, I want to thank you for coming on. Okay, and we're gonna ask you, what's the best way to find you?
Okay, so I have a podcast called "You Don't Know Dick," which can be found wherever fine podcasts are broadcast. All your regular places. It's easy to find.
Yep.
On YouTube, I have
the
Handsome Dick Manitoba program on YouTube, which I'm not trying to make like my son shows me, like, what's this guy 69? This hip hop guy 69 had like 8 in the first 3 days. He had like 8.1 million views of the first song he dropped. I'm not going for that. I'm just going to have fun with it. If I get the inspiration to do more, I'll do more. Right now, like one episode was 5 minutes long. How to make good scrambled eggs. One was, one was.
I saw that.
I do whatever I want to do. I look however I want to look. I try to make it interesting, mix it up. So that's that. I have a great website. It's a really nice website because I believe in writing like a paragraph or 2 and a picture, a paragraph, a picture, and it's handsomedickmanitoba.com, and you'll see like a ton of pictures from the bar and a couple little pieces of writing from me. And there you can find out about my website, my podcast. You can find out if you, this is what my friend told me, who's been doing podcasts. One of the first 5 guys that did podcasts in America. He's been doing it. It's an amazing show. If you don't mind me pushing my friend's show, it's called the Rock and Roll Geek Show. And it's been on since like 2005. And he said to me, the way he pushes his stuff, he goes, listen, if you get value out of what I do, if you get entertainment out of what I do, if you get joy out of what I do, I'm doing this on my couch in my house. It's totally DIY. Whatever you can contribute, $1 a month, $2 a month, $3 a month, 50 cents a month, $10 a month, whatever you think I'm worth. If you're not getting entertainment, you're not going to listen. If you are and you're enjoying it and you look forward to it, please contribute so I can keep doing it. And that's what I say. And you can go to Patreon, Patreon, Patreon.com/Handsome Dick Manitoba. And let's see, in Instagram, you can hit me up as Richard Manitoba or Handsome Dick Manitoba. And you could join on YouTube I have 8 pages on fucking Facebook, but the best one to get me on is not my private one. That's like family and food. The best one to get me on is the Handsome Dick Manitoba fan club. And on what else is there? Twitter. I'm Dick Manitoba and I think Richard Manitoba. I don't even remember.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on, Richard. And this whole thing was fantastic. I loved it. You answered a lot of questions, a lot of depth. I appreciate that. And Rob,
That's it,
end the
people.
show. What
Thank
we
you,
say?
Dick. Thank you for everything, and I'll send you the links to everything, and I'll plug your Patreon, your Twitter, and all your stuff. And like every show, remember, guys, don't get drunk,
Fellas,
get lumped
thank you.
up.
Don't get drunk. Don't
Thanks
get
for
lumped
thinking
up.
of me,
later.
brothers.
Take care.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Love you, man. Take care.